Hey guys, Tess here from It's Your Therapy. You can find me at itsyourtherapy.com or www.itsyourtherapy.com. And today's titled video is called Cognitive Distortion. So, if you are unfamiliar with what that is, it's basically a therapy word, cognitive, for the way that we think, okay? A distortion of how we think. So, a cognitive distortion, basically. So here are 10 of them. I'll walk you through. And the goal of this is to establish what are the familiar cognitive distortions that we have and how are we able to, one, become aware of them, and two, what do we do about them? So let's just start with number one, which is all or nothing thinking. So a lot of people will term this as black and white thinking. It's that, everything, nothing, always, never. Um, Basically, the extreme of anything where life is not extremes. I mean, there's times where we might be pushed to our limits and we might try extreme things, but nothing is so extreme. And a lot of people who have developed these cognitive distortions over time have maybe suffered some extreme things, such as trauma or shocking things. But the goal here is just to recognize, when do I use words like everything, nothing, never, always, uh, anything that is um, so one side of the spectrum, okay? So, what I would say to this is people who think that if I'm not perfect, I have failed. So, very extreme, right? I'm not totally perfect. I'm not, the height of perfection, extreme. So, I've completely failed. And the truth is, nobody is any of those because perfection is our own perspective, and every time that think that we're approaching it, we typically set the bar a little higher because human brains were wired for stimulation and growth and more. So another example is either I do it right or not at all. And right, again, is one of those things that is relative to the person perceiving whatever it is that is right or wrong to them. So you can argue both sides of the situation, and that's what I challenge you to do when you have this all or nothing thinking. And maybe the best thing to do is to ask yourself, what is the gray? What is it hypothetically, if it's not this or that, what could it be? Something in between. Maybe I don't eat everything in the pantry today. Maybe I just have a bowl of cereal. Maybe I don't uh, do heroin. Maybe I just take my medications as prescribed. So these kind of push pull, all or nothing approaches obviously don't work. You end up crashing and burning, only to come back to the place of the cycle up and down, and not finding that happy medium for where your emotions like to live in that window of tolerance that you feel a sense of control over your life. So really, really important cognitive distortion. The next one is mental filter. So only paying attention to certain types of evidence. So that is basically selective evidence. I don't know if you've ever heard of the reticular activating system, but it is a system within our brain where we have a belief about something. It comes from our core, and we have this belief. So everything that we do, see, everything that comes at us really is filtered from the core. So nothing truly comes in and out until it has gone through the process of what our core beliefs are, which is a whole nother video. And I really want to recommend that you watch that video to understand core beliefs more. But our mental filter, we basically look at something and we say, you know what, I'm going to, and it's not conscious, but this is your subconscious talking, that you find the thing so that you're right. So let's say I believe that the sky is purple. I'm going to look for all the evidence that the sky is purple and convince myself that the sky is purple. Maybe a more relatable example would be I believe that the my coworker is thinking negative things about me. And then you start looking for the evidence. They're more silent than usual. They are making vague, uh, ambiguous looks at you all day. They're talking or whispering to somebody else and they looked your way. And then we start pulling out evidence that is false evidence because we don't really know if that person is talking about us or thinking about us negatively, but because our core belief is negative, we think that the person that we're having transference toward is thinking about us negatively. Or we don't necessarily have to have transference towards them, but we believe that they think negatively of us because we believe that we have negative core beliefs. Okay, so that's just one example. Noticing our failures, but not seeing our successes. So if we are only seeing everything that we failed at because we believe I'm a failure, for example, that's a core belief. I am a failure. So we believe that we're a failure, so we're going to look for all the evidence that we're a failure. I believe I'm not good enough, so I'm going to look for all the evidence that I'm not good enough. I believe that I'm ugly, so I'm going to look for all the evidence that I'm ugly. I believe, and so on. The next third one is jumping to conclusions. So there are two key types to jumping to conclusions. One is mind reading or assuming something, kind of what I explained with the mental filter, but that's more evidence-based. So jumping to conclusions, assuming that somebody is thinking something, doing something, plotting against us, not getting the facts from the horse's mouth, basically. And you're imagining these things inside your head. You're making these assumptions without real legit facts, without seeing it objectively, so that you can make a conscious decision about what really is going on here. Okay. And then the second piece of that is fortune telling. So predicting the future. Fortune telling is saying, oh, because of this, assumption, now I'm going to predict that this or that thing will happen in the future. So this person is probably doing that to spite me. Or maybe it's something completely in the future where you're saying to yourself, you know what? I'm probably not going to get that promotion. There's so much evidence here that I'm not going to get the promotion. I'm, this and I'm that, and I'm not good enough, and I'm not worth it, and I don't deserve it, and I'm ugly, and I'm fat, and I'm not smart, or I'm stupid. All these, again, negative core beliefs that lead to us fortune telling in a typically awfulizing way. And awfulizing is another terminology that we use in cognitive behavioral therapy to describe really spiraling out of control, really taking something small and magnifying it, which leads us to our fourth cognitive distortion. So catastrophizing, awfulizing something, taking it to the extreme. Again, that extreme polar opposite, one side of the spectrum type thinking. The other is minimizing it. So just really not seeing it for what it is objectively. So blowing things out of proportion, thinking, my mom paid for treatment and, now the insurance company is telling me that I don't have enough money to cover my stay here. So now I'm going to go home and I'm going to repeat the behaviors that got me in here because I have nothing, because I am nothing, and I might as well just die. Awfulizing. Taking it to the complete extreme where which is the opposite of being solution-minded, right? So finding the solution, asking yourself how and what questions. How can I go about this so that I can stay in treatment? Or if I don't get to stay in treatment, what can I do? How can I still stay healthy or keep the healthy behaviors in my life that I learned in treatment already? The What are we on? Fifth thing is emotional reasoning. So assuming that because we feel a certain way, what we think must be true. So if we have anger, for example, we think that we are angry or that person deserves to be punched. However, if we're internalizing it and putting on ourselves or externalizing it and putting on others, we are emotionally reasoning something that is not logic. So it's the opposite of using the executive function, using our logic, and our emotions are now controlling the way that we think and behave versus our logical, organized, executive functioning, being in control of what we choose to do and say and be. So, for example, I feel embarrassed, so I must be an idiot. So, just because you feel embarrassed doesn't necessitate that you are an idiot, right? Like the two don't equate. If you feel embarrassed about something, you feeling like you're an idiot, that's a core belief that came from somewhere else down the line, some other traumatic event, whether it happened in childhood or through adult, but it is definitely not um, the they definitely do not equal each other. One does not equate to the other. So if you feel embarrassed, you have embarrassment. You feel embarrassment. It's something that you have, it's not something that you are, and it doesn't mean that you're an idiot. It doesn't mean anything that you don't want it to mean. You can create the meaning. I feel embarrassed. So therefore, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with this embarrassment. I'm going to decide to only be embarrassed for 5 seconds, and then I'm going to move on with my life. Easier said than done, obviously. And if you do need help with this, that is why I'm a therapist, and that's why I do what I do. And you can contact me either by the number that I provide or visit my website. But just knowing that your emotions, doing the reasoning, are not going to be the most healthy option for you at any given point, to first calm your emotions and use coping skills, and check out that video on coping skills, which will help you get some ideas of how to cope with some intense emotions. And then wait until you're calm enough to be able to see the situation objectively and make logic and reason rationally. The sixth thing is labeling. So assigning labels to ourselves, I'm an idiot, or someone else, they're an idiot, or what an imbecile, or how stupid, or they're jack-offs, or whatever it is that people call each other, to kind of just put them in a box and move on with their lives. It definitely serves a purpose, but what is happening inside of you? Are you becoming the person that you want to be? Are you becoming more passionate, loving, and, working up to a higher, in quantum physics, they call it a higher vibration? Are you becoming more of the person that you want to be by labeling someone else? Of course not. We're building up, anger, resentment inside of us, toxic emotions that, have proven now to cause cancer. So labeling, I'm a loser, I'm completely useless, they're such imbeciles, none of those are going to work, and that's another kind of distortion to look out for. The seventh thing is overgeneralizing. So this is something where you can use everything is always rubbish, which everything always, again, all or nothing, black and white type thinking. But overgeneralizing is just taking one thing and thinking that everything else is now linked to that one thing. So let's say, for example, you have an issue with your dad growing up, and now you believe that all men are like your dad. For example, your dad cheated on your mom, and so now you think that all men cheat. That is the perfect example for taking one little incident, not little, it's not little, I don't want to minimize that. It's kind of a big deal. But you're taking one incident in your life, and because it's so close to you, again, that subjective view of it, it feels like all men are going to be like that. And until that paradigm has changed, probably you will attract men like that in your life, and it will just continue to compound and continue to reinforce those feelings that all men are like that, versus meeting some other men, looking for other men that are not like that, and then um, really just debating that old belief, that generalized belief that all men are like that. You can prove that belief wrong by finding out that there's not there's it's a stereotype. There's That's your dad, and other men are other men. So seeing a pattern based upon a single event or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw would be the definition of that one. The eighth thing is qualifying the positive. So discounting the good things that happen to you or for you, or that you have done some that you have done for some reason or another. So not letting things count, not giving yourself credit for the efforts that you have gone in a day. It's kind of the I'm not good enough syndrome, I like to call it, because that is, again, a core belief. And people with this really have that syndrome. Nothing is ever good enough. And I can explain the whole dynamics of how that belief develops and at another time. But for the sake of this video, basically disqualifying the positive is never really recognizing the efforts that you're making ever so incremental, which is really important. I've talked about in other videos the reward system of your brain. So it's very important that you set some goals, specifically and preferably in the morning or at night, whatever works for you, but setting some goals that are just kind of on your mind in the background all day and they're fresh for that day. And then at the end of the day, reevaluating, the things that you gave effort to, whether it was towards your goals or not, but all the little efforts that you could be consciously aware of now that you're thinking about them. So, for example, I wanted to not go to the gym today. So I didn't go to the gym. And I instead got home at an earlier time so that I could eat dinner earlier or whatever the goal was. And then I take a step back and I go, you know what? Good job. Like, you did that. You did that. Check. Like, you can put a star on your calendar for a job well done with that. Some people will, in their calendars, put like I have a little box at the end of my week, but it will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the little things. And I have like 3 different goals, like every single day for each thing. I have this like 3 goals for each day, and then I'll check it off when I've done it at the end of the day. And that's just kind of my way of looking at it and going, you know what? I did that. And even if I don't get all the boxes checked, I ask myself, well, how can I do better next time? But what are some other things that I can be proud of? Maybe it wasn't these things that I wrote down, but what is something else? So at the end of the day, no matter what, there's something that I can be proud of. And also, when I do check them off, if it's one of the 3 boxes, I can say, you know what? I did that one. And choosing to focus on the ones that you do versus the ones that you don't do, and kind of awfulizing or going into other cognitive distortion. Is number 9. The shoulds and musts, and oughts. We should on ourselves, and it is just so debilitating at times. And we then suffer this emotional, inappropriate guilt or even shame because we think that we need to be doing something when it just doesn't line up with our true needs that are probably subconscious. Because if we knew what our real needs were, then we wouldn't be saying you should be doing this and you should be doing that. We'd be in tune with what we need, and then we would go forth and we would just do what we can and have grace for anything that we don't end up doing. Does that make sense? Okay, so using critical words like should, must, ought can make us feel guilty or like we have already failed. So again, that core belief, I am a failure. And if we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. So if we're shoulding on other people, what is that doing to our emotional state, right? So they should have done this and they should have done that. And, like they didn't do that. We're going to feel irritable, frustrated, angered, upset. Do you really want to feel those emotions? And if you allow yourself to feel them, how often do you really want to feel them? This could be a really great way, just working on this alone in a week, just noticing how many times that you use the word should or must or ought on yourself, and see what that is doing to your psychology. But just noticing that word, that's a good challenge. I've challenged myself with that in the past, and just that awareness of that and changing that to could really, really helped me. So if any of these are helping you, or if you apply these to your life, please comment below and let us know how you're doing, because you might help someone else too with your experience. And obviously you'll be helping yourself, because you'll be reiterating, what's beneficial and what isn't, in a live format. So we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and comment below when you can. The very last one is 10, the personalization, or thinking that things that other people are responsible for are now your responsibility. So a core belief there is, I am responsible, right? So you're feeling responsible for things that really aren't your responsibility. For example, if someone demands, watch this YouTube, and you don't, and then you start feeling guilty, but it's your friend that told you to watch that YouTube channel, and then you're like, I didn't do that. But then at the same time, your friend didn't ask you first and get permission, like, do you mind if I suggest a YouTube channel for you to watch? Instead, they just totally disrespected that you had a choice and said, watch this, without really gaining your respect by asking you if you wanted that. So it's pertinent that you don't get upset about things that are not your responsibility and you didn't sign up for and you didn't agree to. So that is something to watch out for. Are people making you feel responsible for something they did, or that you never agreed to or signed up to in the beginning? This happens more often than people think. So now it turns into the blame game. So you're blaming yourself, you're getting resentment towards the other person. Things are weird now. You're feeling guilty. So your psychology and your feelings, your state is being mismanaged, or just feeling negative or at a lower vibration, or not necessarily at the loving, helpful, respectful, communicative relationship that healthy friendships so much stand for and need to be for, healthy, happy life. Believing things are totally your fault in relationship is another example. So if it's two people, two need to communicate. So you definitely are responsible for your part. But if that other person doesn't measure up, you don't need to take on their responsibility. That's them. If they don't want to communicate and you've done your very best to communicate using communication techniques that are healthy, and that's another video that you can definitely look into, communication techniques that I will provide here, that you've done that, you use your I statements, you've said, I hear you saying that, and you're definitely calm when you've talked to that person, you feel at peace, your state is love when you're talking to that person, and you know that you've done all you can, then absolutely you've protected yourself. There's no room for guilt, because you know that you're doing all you can, and you're managing your state, you're managing that loving state. And that's it, guys. That's all I have. So like I said before, comment below, subscribe, so that you get the notifications for the next videos, and only if you want to. And we look forward to hearing from you, and whatever comments, concerns, or experiences that you have. I would love to hear how these cognitive distortions manifest themselves in your life and what you're doing about them. So take care, and till next time.